often run into an operation that doesn't suffer from what might be called a downtime chain reaction. It's a variation of the old story that begins, "For want of a nail," and ends up telling how a whole kingdom was lost, just because of that little nail. For example, this busy mill yard, this logger's truck, and this skidder are all about to be affected by one of those downtime situations that came about because of a little thing. Not yet observed, or even suspected, is a cooling system on its way to overheating. But why should anything be suspected? Coolant has been added when it was needed. The trouble is, recommendations say that a rust inhibitor should also be added on a regular schedule. Merely bringing the water level up to the mark is not sufficient to ward off the problem. And the very fact that coolant had to be added from time to time should have signaled trouble. Sure enough, what could have been prevented happens. The machine is down. Operations are at a standstill while the cooling system is cleaned and flushed, and the skidder checked for other possible damage. Meanwhile, blood pressures are going up. Downtime is going up. And costs and overhead continue to mount. Up, up, up. When equipment is down, and when everything else is on the rise except profits, a fellow is likely to be thinking,
as far as I'm concerned, down is up. Anybody who works with equipment eventually realizes that a whole lot of downtime is preventable. But when time is short and you're trying to beat the weather and stay on schedule, well, what I'm leading up to made a believer out of me. The convincer was a tire. Well, nothing unusual about it, except at the time it was pretty low on air, a thing that could have been checked in seconds and taken care of in not much more than that, a condition that could have been prevented if our maintenance system had been operating the way it was supposed to operate, and if the daily walk-around hadn't been skipped on account of the pressure we were under. It sure wasn't a case of not knowing. Now, I know what low air pressure does to tire life. I know about rim cuts and cracked sidewalls and heating up. But, like I said, we had to get the job done, and well, maybe your mind's not on ton-mile-per-hour ratings at a time like that. Maybe you're not thinking much about the relationship of air pressure to temperature and speed, and the distance of travel and load and... Well, sure, it cost us. We had a machine down on a tough job. We'd lost a valuable tire and the time it took to change it. But there was something more important than cost at stake. You aren't just risking damage to your equipment. If you let preventive maintenance slide, you may be risking somebody's life. I sat there in the shack afterward thinking about how to avoid those risks. The thing to do was to make sure nothing like that ever happened again. Downtime. Gotta hold it down. And then it hit me. I was the one who ordered the corner cutting. Sometimes I was the guy who got things cranked up before the equipment could be checked out. Well, after all, I'm the superintendent. Holding downtime down is up to me. I made myself a note of that. Up to me. And it's a good thing I did. Because that's when I first realized that I may have been getting in the way of good preventive maintenance all along.
You're going to be working over there today.
Hey, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go on with your inspection, okay? I would find myself half a dozen times about to interrupt somebody who was obviously looking for trouble spots. And that's a big part of prevention, looking for potential problems before they get out of hand. After I decided bringing downtime down was up to me, one of the things I learned was to be patient. To wait a minute and let people check things out. Score another point for me. For taking the time to see for myself that a piece of equipment has been through all its recommended servicing before it goes on a job. Doing this not only encourages the maintenance crew to get the work done, but also to keep their checklists and records up to date. And whatever system you have, from the simplest filing card to the most sophisticated computer, it isn't any good if you don't use it. Use your eyes, too. Keep alert to situations where something could go wrong. Like the time we got a crack on an excavator bucket.
Hey, hold it!
Oh, a track is a handy place to attach a ground clamp when you're welding. But the track sure doesn't make a positive ground to the rest of the machine. It's connected through the undercarriage, the final drive, the transmission, and at other spots. But it's a lousy ground for an excavator bucket. The right way to do it is to clamp the ground to the same part that's being welded. Can you imagine the cost if he'd struck that arc?
Hey, don't forget to clean that bucket for the ground clamp.
All right, okay.
It could have caused internal damage at any number of places. Can you imagine what a mess it would be if I hadn't told myself, keeping downtime down is up to me?
Up to him, he says. Well, maybe so. But maintenance, preventive or otherwise, is why I'm here. That's a big part of a mechanic's job. I don't care who says it's up to him. It's up to me. Mechanics depend a lot on the machine's lube and maintenance guide. It outlines the easy ways to minimize downtime. But sometimes we have to learn the hard way. Take me and that wheel loader. Man, did I fix it. But good. A guy from the dealership was making a stall test during lunch. But of course you can't make the stall test without setting the brake. And when the brake is set, a horn blows to remind you not to move the machine with the brake on. And that horn was driving me crazy. Well, I took care of that. I meant to put the fuse back in after the stall test, of course. You guessed it. I forgot all about the fuse. And the operator started her up without checking the brake control. You'd have thought he would have noticed that the machine was sluggish. But no, why blame him? Holding downtime down is up to me. And I made a mistake. To prove that down is up, both because a machine down means costs are up, and because this particular downtime was strictly up to me.
We ran a stall.
It was one of those days you hate to remember, when you learn something the hard way.
I forgot to put it back in.
Well, you know, these kind of silly mistakes cost me money. You just can't afford it. Put it back in.
Human error is the cause of much downtime. But fortunately, human errors can be controlled. Take these oil storage drums. What's the weight of the oil in them? Well, maybe they were marked at one time, but nobody would be able to figure out now whether this one holds 40 weight or 10 weight. If 10 weight oil is used where 40 weight is needed, abnormal wear and downtime may be the price somebody has to pay. Or take these drums being used plug up. Is there anything wrong with that? Dirt and water can accumulate around the plugs and cause trouble. Here's what can happen on a hot day. The oil inside expands, building up enough pressure to force some of it out past the plug onto the top of the drum. Now, this cycle is reversed at night when it cools off. A partial vacuum can occur inside the drum and pull water and contaminants into the oil. Dirty oil guarantees all kinds of problems. It's an open invitation to downtime, and these costly delays can usually be traced to human error. But not all human errors are matters of carelessness. Some problems can be brought on by trying too hard. For example, this over-eager maintenance man is about to make a potentially costly mistake. Now, those are lifetime lubricated rollers, and he can't believe lifetime lubricated means what it says. He can't believe that this sealed system takes care of itself. He can't believe that this plug in the end port is only for filling the roller initially. Instead, he decides to flush it out, forcing oil through the port until it runs back out again past the applicator. What he's really doing is stirring up settled-out wear particles and driving them up between the roller and the bushings, where they may actually increase wear, grinding into the bushings and scratching the shaft. When you're carrying out a preventive maintenance program, believe the book. If the book doesn't say to do something, then don't do it. Depend on the operation and maintenance guides to tell you the right procedure and when those procedures ought to be followed.
I'm a lube man, and I know that maintenance manuals are updated just like the machines. For instance, the lubrication requirements are greatly reduced on the G-Series graders. But lubricating by the book is vital on any machine. You have to lubricate the shoes and the top of the circle gear on any grader to increase circle life. But suppose you didn't grease the circle when the situation required, as on this earlier model. Before long, friction would cause the top of the circle to become galled, make the blade assembly chatter and bind. Trying to adjust the shoes to compensate wouldn't do the job because of the unevenness of the top surface of the circle gear. Things would probably go from bad to worse. Precision grading would be out of the question, and rough work might damage the circle gear beyond repair if the condition weren't corrected, all for the lack of a little grease. It doesn't make any difference whether the grader is an older model or almost new. The problem would still be the same. That's why I say preventing trouble is up to me.
Naturally, a lube man or a mechanic thinks preventive maintenance is all their department. They're the ones who do the work. And the superintendent thinks it's up to him to watch out for potential trouble and make sure the service time is allotted. But I'm the operator. I'm the guy who lives with this piece of equipment. I'm the guy who can tell what's different about it today from yesterday. Whether that oil drip means somebody just got sloppy when he was filling the crankcase, or if there's a leak developing. There are 1,000 little things that can cause trouble, end up costing money that no one else but me would be likely to notice. This buildup of corrosion on the battery, for instance. I'd know how to get rid of it before it drains the battery. And I know to look at the water level, and why not? It doesn't take that long to check the specific gravity. It doesn't take anywhere near as long as it takes to wait for another battery to be brought out and put in. I can prevent a whole lot of downtime. Most operators can. It's not like I had to baby my truck. Any CAT equipment has more than enough of what it takes. With just a little respect, you can keep your machines at close to new performance. And that's what it is with me. Respect for the machine. Even the starting procedures, if they're done right, can help prevent trouble. Checking to see that that transmission is in neutral and the parking brake is set. Seeing that the hydraulic controls are all in hold position. Allowing all the working parts to warm up and operating the hydraulics slowly at first. Yes, sir. This truck and me, we can move mountains as long as we work together. As long as I have respect for what a piece of well-designed machinery needs in the way of care. That's all preventive maintenance is. Common sense and a little care. And you can't expect the machine to provide those two commodities. That's what's up to me.
Huh. They all want to claim it. They all want you to think that holding downtime down is up to them. The big contractor, the job superintendent, the mechanic, the operator. And I admit they're right. But all those guys are only partly responsible. One of them sets up a system for keeping equipment running. Another sees that maintenance is carried out. The mechanic, he actually does the work, though he doesn't necessarily plan it. And the operator, yep, it's up to him to keep his eyes open. But what about me? What about the guy who's owner, manager, maintenance man, and operator, all in one? I've got just this one scraper, see? And when it's down, my whole operation's down. There's nobody I can share the responsibility with or the blame. Down is really up to me. That's why what the manual says is what I do. I've learned not to overlook anything. This item, for instance, about checking and adjusting the elevator chain on my scraper. I overlooked that just once. What happened was, I'd been working in sandy dirt, which meant the chain should have been checked pretty often. Well, it wasn't. So it jumped off. The elevator stopped working and the bowl wouldn't load up. Well, I looked back to see why not. And there went a lot of time, resetting the surveyor stakes, pulling the machine off the job, and none of it needed to happen. Not throwing that chain, or losing control, or knocking over the surveyor stakes, or the wear and tear on the machine. None of it needed to happen if I had checked out that elevator and made the adjustments that were called for. I am your number one example of why you have to keep telling yourself, down is up to me.
Whether you're an owner, operator, mechanic, or job superintendent, the fact remains, much of the irritation, delay, and cost of having a piece of equipment down can be avoided if everyone concerned has the attitude that down is up.
Well, I still say it's up to me.
No, it's not. It's up to me.
It's up to me.
I don't care what anybody says. It's up to me.